Welcome, everybody, to our Career Elevation Roundtable. We are getting started momentarily. Amazing. I'll say this again if you've heard me say it. I want to just welcome everybody this Friday afternoon to our Career Elevation Roundtable. Thank you for making time for us. I'm just absolutely delighted to be here. If we haven't met before, my name is Anusha Harith Paoletti, and I'm a partner at Elevate Network. And today, our speaker is Margaret C. Andrews. Welcome, Margaret.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
I want to share your bio with everybody here because you have such a tremendous background. So, Margaret is a seasoned executive, academic, leader, speaker, and instructor. She has created and teaches a variety of leadership courses and professional and executive programs at Harvard University and is the founder of the Milo Center, a private leadership development firm. Her clients include some names that I'm certain everyone has heard of. They include Amazon, Citi, Continental, Walmart, Wayfair, and the UN. She lives in Brookline, Massachusetts, and we are absolutely delighted that you could make time for us, Margaret.
Thank you so much, Anusha. It's great to be here.
But you also have some very exciting news because you have a book coming out on Tuesday.
I do. The book has been many years in the making, as you might imagine. Actually, truly, probably close to 2 decades in the making, and is coming out on Tuesday. So I'm super excited to get it launched, to get it out in the world. So what I'm going to about today relates to that. So thank you all. Appreciate that.
I feel we are doubly appreciative that you're making time for us the Friday before the book launch. So this is going to be a conversation that we will treasure. But I'm going to quickly hand it off to you, Margaret, because everyone's here to listen to you speak. So please take it away.
Thank you. All right. Well, welcome everybody. It's so nice to be here, and I'm glad that you're spending your Friday here. Lunchtime for many of us on the East Coast, and whatever meal you are perhaps eating at your desk right now. So I'm hoping that this will be fairly interactive. So I'd like to start with interactive. Question. And so I'd love you to go to where your chat is, put your fingers on your keyboard, and I'm just going to ask you a question and type in whatever comes into your head. There's no right or wrong answers. So when you hear the term leader, what words or phrases come to mind? When you hear that term, leader, what words or phrases come to mind? So, as I say, no right or wrong answers. Empathetic, charismatic, empowers others, influencer, supporter, lifting others up, responsibility, trustworthy, influencer, under inspirational. Wow, they're going up so fast I can't read them all. Supportive, supporter, guide, strong, care, capability, offers high challenge and high support, more complex than anyone expects. Yes, Heather. Advocate, cares for others, calm, control, supportive, motivating, charisma, confident, collaborative. Wow, some great words. Excellent. All right. So, the next question is, how would you define the word leadership? So you don't have to go to Webster's to look this up, but in your mind, what is leadership when we say that word? How do you define it? Maybe it's somewhat similar to what you typed in, but that's more about a leader. But what how do we define the term leadership? I oftentimes think this one can be a harder one to answer for a lot of people because we use the word a lot, but we have slightly different interpretations of someone who guides, influences, guiding others to succeed, someone who called to inspire and mentor others, bring motivation, sets the tone, vision, guidance, and care for others. Experienced, so, okay, as I say, they're going up so fast. Driving clarity, alignment, optimized performance. Someone who empowers, lifts up their followers. These are great. These are great, and lots of commonality in these answers with different words used. So I agree with practically all of them, and I will say, in my mind, what it means is kind of getting people, individuals, and groups of individuals moving in the same direction toward a common goal, and ideally a better future, which may mean different things to different people. Excellent. So let me also ask you one more question, and that is who are some leaders that come to mind for you? Who are some leaders that come to mind for you? They could be past, present. They can come from anything, people you know, people you don't know, famous people, etc. So who comes to mind? Walt Disney. All right. Um, Oprah. Yeah. Marisa characters in books. Okay. Um, who else? Jack Welch. Yep. Obama. Okay. Winston Churchill. Yeah. Great. Narendra Modi. Michelle Obama. Yeah, great. Yeah, lots of different types of people are showing up. We see a past peer, Ian, Bill Gates. Yeah, so some very famous ones, and also people that have, been leaders in very very different. And yeah, I love that. A former manager of mine, Joe G. Yes, and that is the thing. I think we oftentimes know what really great leadership looks like. So let me just share a slide with you. So I have, I think, 10 folks here that we would all probably call leaders in different ways. We've got J. Robert Oppenheimer, head of the Manhattan Project, Oprah, who somebody mentioned, Elon Musk, Katie Carrico. Those of you that don't know her, she is a biochemist and a Nobel laureate. And if you had a COVID vaccine, it's because of her. Martin Luther King, Christine Lagarde, Mohandas Gandhi, Stephen Hawking, Catherine Graham, and Gene Kranz. He's one of my favorites. It proves that great leaders don't always wear capes. So, what one thing I want to ask you is, besides the fact that they were all or are currently probably a bit above average in intelligence, and that we would call them all leaders, and of course they make decisions, and they do all those leaderly things. But what in personality or style do they all have in common? What do you think? So go ahead and chat it in if you have anything. And if you don't, that's fine too. Visionary, some charisma, some bravery and confidence. Yeah. Takes a lot of bravery to do what all of them have done. Disruptors, many of them disruptors. Yeah. High energy. Yes. Generally, leaders do have pretty high energy. All right. Futurists, firm but fair. Okay. Some people would disagree with that for some of them, perhaps. Well, all right. So, why I like to show this is because, in truth, you're right that they have, they make decisions. Many of them are very charismatic, etc. But in truth, these 10 leaders actually have very little in common. And that's the point, is that in this, just these 10 people here that many of you know, all or many of their names, we have people that are extroverts and people that are introverts. We have some people that come from wealth, those that didn't. We have people here that would be considered or called hard nosed, and others more empathetic. We also have people that, were in business and finance, government service, pushing the scientific frontier. So leadership in all different types of industries. But we also have people here that have dealt with abuse, addiction, depression, and disability. So the point is that leadership comes in all kinds of packages. All types of people can be leaders. There is no one single style that is best, and that all of these folks were really kind of fit for purpose, if you will. And all of them, actually, somebody put in their bravery, and I think somebody put in they're not afraid to fail. Well, we all know, or maybe most of us do, that Oprah was essentially fired from her first job, right? They said she shouldn't be on TV, so she kind of proved them all wrong. And lots of these folks, particularly the scientists, do a lot of things that don't work until they get to the point that something does work. So that's, I think, one of the most things I really want to share with people is that it takes all types for people. It takes all types of people that can be leaders, including your type. So you don't have to be like other people. You can borrow from other people, but you are you. And really, what leadership is about is bringing that out, bringing that forward. So let me do another exercise with you. What I'd like you to do is please get a piece of paper and something to write with, or if you are somebody that, types better than you write, that's totally fine. We're going to do a quick exercise. And if you happen to be watching this later, I hope you will do this with us so that you will see how it really works. It's very different watching an exercise than it is actually doing it. So hopefully you all have a piece of paper and something to write with, or your fingers are at the ready to type a certain list. What I'd like you to do first of all is to think about the person that is or was your very best boss. It could be your current boss, it could be the one right before that, it could be the first boss you ever had, it could be anybody. However, there are a few things. It needs to be somebody that you worked directly for and not somebody you wish you had worked for, right? So maybe you wish you had worked for that person. Oh, they were such a great leader, etc. But no, it has to be somebody you work for, and not somebody you wish you had. It can't be a celebrity CEO, right? So it can't be Jack Welch unless you worked directly for Jack Welch, and it can't be a fictional character. So it can't be Ted Lasso, I'm sorry to say. So it needs to be somebody that you work directly for. So what I'd like you to do is get that one person. It needs to be one person. I hope this is a really hard one for you because you've had so many great ones. I had the opposite happen in a program that I taught one time where one woman raised her hand and said, well, what if you've never had a good boss? And I thought, oh my goodness, I said, well, just choose the least bad then, right? It's all going to be relative. So, okay, I'm going to hope that everybody has that one person. Now, what I want you to do is please create a list, a long list, hopefully, of all the reasons why you chose this person as your best boss, chose this person, not other people, or why they were your best boss. And go for a really long list. And I have been doing this for decades. And the answers to this question come in many flavors, right? It can be so many things. It could be that they were the smartest person that you've ever worked with, or they were really good at some skill that was needed in their job, whether it was surgery and suturing, or actuarial science, or animal husbandry, or anything, right? Some of these technical and functional skills, or hard skills, or something that made them really good at their job, what they did. It can also be all kinds of other stuff that, they saw something in you, or they were really good at developing you. It could be all kinds of things. So let me give you a moment to come up with that list, and go for as long a list as you can come up with in just the moments that I'm going to give you. Big reasons, small reasons, things that you think only you would say. But what was important to you? What was going on with this person? So think about those big ones, but you can't say something like they were a great leader because you got to explain what that means. What do you mean they were a great leader? What was it that they were doing or not doing, whatever? Okay. So go ahead, create that list. Big reasons, small reasons, could be anything that was important to you with this person. And hopefully you've got a list of, 8 or more. And sometimes, as I say, we've got a longer list. Okay. So we have some people that have their cameras on. So wave at me if you've got 5 or more, if you've got your camera on. You have 5 or more? Okay. Okay. I see a few others. Okay. So go for 5 or more, right? Any reasons that you have. As I say, they can be lots and lots of different reasons. All right. So hopefully you all have 5 or more. And now what I'd like you to do is look at your list and highlight or circle or star or whatever it is that you do, the top 3. The top 3. These are the real reasons. These are why this person is really on your list, is for these 3 reasons. Could have been the first 3 reasons that you wrote down. Could have been the last 3 reasons that you wrote down, or something in between. So we've got one boss in mind, and we have 3 reasons. These are the deep reasons. These are what made the difference, why this person was on your list as best boss and not other people, or not somebody else. Okay. Okay, those of you with your camera on, wave at me if you've got your top three. Okay, all right. I think I see everybody. Okay, good. Thank you for that. So now what I'm going to do is I'll tell you that I have done this exercise with thousands of people all over the world in every imaginable industry. And it turns out that most of the answers, almost all of the answers to this question, generally fall within three buckets. So the first bucket is intelligence or IQ. All right. So that is, they are just super smart. Doesn't mean that they were a great accountant necessarily, although that may have contributed to it. This is like raw intelligence. So let me ask you to type in how many of your top three, not of your seven or eight or whatever you had, how many of your top three were on intelligence? And the answer is usually zero or one. Was it zero or one? So go ahead and, okay, one, zero, 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 one, zero. Okay. So mostly ones and zeros. Okay. Great. And we see that quite a bit. That tends to be zeros and ones, and generally tends to be more zeros than ones. Okay. All right. So the second bucket is what we're going to call technical and functional skills. These are the things that very oftentimes made them very good at their job, whether that it was that they were a great tax accountant, they knew the ins and outs of the tax code, or that they were very proficient with programming in R, or some of these more hard skills, we may call them as well. So look at your list, your top three, and how many of your top three were in the technical and functional skills area? It's usually zero or one, but sometimes it's two. So, okay, I see lots of zeros and a one. Okay, a couple of a few ones, mostly zeros. All right, so keep them coming. All right, anyone else? How many of your top three? So if it's zero, that's fine. Just type in zero. Okay, and okay. Mostly zeros and some ones. Perfect. Okay, so the third bucket, if you will, is around interpersonal skills. This goes by many words. It goes by interpersonal skills, relationship skills, my least favorite soft skills, or emotional intelligence, right? It goes by many different names. And these are things about they saw something in you, they developed you, they cared about you as a person. So go ahead, and how many of your top three were in that one? Yeah, one, one, three, three, two, three, 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 two. Yeah. Okay. So what you're seeing from all of the people that are typing their numbers in is that we have more of the answers, more of your answers that came in the interpersonal skills bucket. And this is the case for every time I've ever run this with any audience I've ever run this with younger managers, with older managers, with senior, more junior, etc. So these are the skills that make us good at our work. And if you think about it, IQ, of course, we need IQ, especially to do our jobs, but IQ really gives you a big advantage when you're early in your career, and when you're learning something new. But over time, you tend to be working with people that are more or less same IQ as you, and maybe an extra couple points don't do you that much benefit. Technical and functional skills super helpful in your early career, but become less so as you begin managing people. And it is the interpersonal skills that tend to matter more. And in fact, what you see from people that type things in general, that's true too. If all of these were equally important in being a leader, we would have had a third of the responses in the IQ, a third in technical and functional skills, and a third in interpersonal skills. But that's not what we see. And it's not true also of any other group I've worked with. So, over, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, I started keeping track of all of the responses and where they were. And it turned out that, I would take down post it notes and I would put them to take them home and I would lay them out all over the floor and I would count them and track them in an Excel spreadsheet. And what I found is that the interpersonal skills, 85% of the responses on average are in the interpersonal skills bucket. 85%. And the remaining 15% is split relatively evenly between IQ and technical and functional skills. And so, this is not exactly true, that it's 85 and 7.5% in each group. But I think the lowest I've ever seen on interpersonal skills was probably around 75%, and the highest has been over 90. So in all groups, this is what we value. So let me just say also, because sometimes people misinterpret what I'm saying, it doesn't mean that IQ and technical and functional skills aren't important. Because they got you very oftentimes to a certain level. But what gets you to higher levels of leadership is actually your interpersonal skills. And that is what really this managing yourself and leading others is all about. And in fact, when we start with understanding and managing ourselves, that is where leadership begins. If we can't understand ourselves, we can't understand other people. If we can't manage ourselves, we have no credibility in asking other people to manage themselves or to get better. So it begins with understanding and managing ourselves, and then leading and developing others. Right? That's how we move up. Also, then understanding and managing the organizational context. So it's about making decisions. It's about how things work in different cultures. And then we talk about leading units and organizations or leading for the long term. But what you see is in this is that it's really a nested egg, and the understanding and managing ourselves is that through line, right? It's there in all of these other eggs. So that is actually where it starts. So with that, what we do is we whatever our current state is, we think about how do we understand ourselves, and I'll give you some thoughts on this in just a moment. And that's that self-understanding gives us a level of insight about ourselves, about what we want, about how we've been shaped as individuals, and how that shows up in leadership. So, Ben Franklin famously said there are three things very hard: steal a diamond and to know oneself. And I think he was onto something, because, we oftentimes aren't asked these kinds of questions. We aren't asked really to think about who we are really and what we want, as opposed to what maybe our parents wanted for us, society wants from us, etc. So I have these 6 questions that I use a lot. I will just share them with you, but we won't go through them in any detail. But, the first one is around who. And this is who and whose thinking has shaped you as an individual. And the older you are, the longer this list is going to be. So this is obviously people that raised you, people in your family, your childhood friends, your teachers, your early bosses, your college roommate, all kinds of different things. These are people that helped you and people that hurt you. And by the way, some people can be on both sides of the ledger. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say something to the effect of, when I was in third grade, my teacher told me X, either that they were really good at something or really not good at something. And they said, and for 40 years, I've been carrying that around, thinking that I was or wasn't good in something. And now I realize that's not true. And maybe it never was. So who, and also the other part of that is who's thinking. And this is books you've read, movies you've seen, discussions you've had, right? So it's people and ideas. Who and whose ideas have influenced you? Because what happens is, and this is what has shaped us, and this is very oftentimes what comes through in us as leaders. So we oftentimes may think, oh, that comes from my first boss. Oh, that comes from my dad, whatever it is. So who and who's thinking? The second one is around situations and events. What situations and events have shaped you as an individual and maybe show up in your leadership? These are what I call lucky and unlucky accidents. And obviously, unlucky accidents, we know what those are. It might be a car accident or losing your job or something like that. But, there's a lot of lucky accidents too that one of my favorite ones that I hear with some regularity is somebody will say, I really didn't want to go to that party, but my friend made me go. And that's where I met my spouse. So, right, lucky accident. Had your friend not pushed on you, you wouldn't have gone. But all kinds of different things. I've had those even in my own life. I stopped by somebody's office to say hello. And they told me something that changed the way I approached something or what I did next. So, right, had I not stopped by their office, that wouldn't have happened. So, all kinds of situations and events. The third one is what is your definition of success? And this is success in your personal life and success in your professional life. How do you define it? Not how society defines it, or your boss defines it, or your company defines it. How do you define it? And lots of times people will say, oh, I want to get to this level in the organization, or I want to be CEO or an entrepreneur or something. And I always ask, well, what's behind that? Why do you want that? What is it about that? Right? There's probably something deeper there that is it recognition? Is it what? And then also in your personal life, do you want to have uh, great relations with certain people, or do you want to retire with a certain amount of money in the bank, or whatever it is? And again, go underneath those. What's behind those definitions of success? The fourth area is around values. And that is what are your core values and how have they perhaps changed over your life? These are actually, this one I think is very hard for a lot of people to answer. So I'll give you two quick ways into this. One way is to say, if we looked at your calendar as a disinterested party, what would we think you valued? Because where do you spend your time? And so I will say that if you ask both my husband and I our values, we would both say that we value health and fitness. But if you looked at his calendar, it would be more clear because we've been married for over 30 years. And I will say that he works out 6 days a week, no matter what's going on in his life. He'll wake up early, he'll stay up late, he'll do whatever he has to do. Me, not so much. For me, work crowds out my exercise sometimes, right? So actually what you would see is I value work a lot and what I do at work. The other way into values is to think about what makes you mad. What makes you mad, really angry when you hear about it or read about it? Because very oftentimes what's making us angry is that somebody stepped on a value, either that you to you or somebody else, and that's what's making you mad. So think about those values, and they're your values. Nobody else has to agree with them, but they're yours, and they show up in a lot of things that you do. The fifth one is around emotions. So, this is the question of to what extent do you understand your own emotions and the impact that you have on other people when you're having one of these emotions? So, a quick way to think about this one is who knows that you're angry first? Is it you or the person you're with? Right? One is that you understand it and be first, and the other is that they understand it first. So, to what extent do you feel your emotions? Do you understand your emotions? Do you understand how you come across? This is oftentimes a very hard question for people to answer. So, if you find it difficult, welcome. You are in good company. And the last question is around feedback. And this is what type of feedback have you received over your career and in your personal life and your professional life? And I say, because very oftentimes there are commonalities between what we hear at home and at work. Very often, when it relates to listening skills or being open to new ideas or these kinds of things, it may show up a little differently, but oftentimes it's very similar. And the other is, has the feedback changed over time or is something new emerging? So, think about the feedback. And the reason why is that the feedback oftentimes relates back to question 5 because it's how we show up to other people. Are we aware of this? And that's why when we think about feedback, sometimes it's helpful to pay attention to feedback that surprised you or that you disagreed with, right? You were really wanting to fight about it because sometimes it's pointing to a blind spot. So, those are some basic questions that I will say are very helpful in terms of understanding yourself. How did you become to be you? But the other thing I want to mention is that, sometimes doing these questions, especially questions 1 and 2, can bring up some emotion. Maybe there are people in your life that did hurt you or that really led you down a path that was actually not very helpful at all. So, in those situations, and I think lots of us have some level of that, but is the British author C.S. Lewis has a quote that I find just so helpful with this. He said, "You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending." And I think that that is such a great way to think about it, that we can't change that car accident that we were in or that childhood illness or, things like that, right? That's in our past. But we can decide that we want things to be different in the future and then go for that. So if that's for you, I pass that on as well. The other part of this, I'll say, and this I'll give you just a couple of seconds to write down your answers to this, but I encourage you to go back and think about it. Is around, when you look in the mirror, the first question I often ask people is, so what kind of leader are you now? What kind of leader are you now? What are the words and phrases that you would use to describe yourself or that other people have used to describe you? Maybe you've heard this in a performance review or it's on a paper in a performance review. So, and those 6 questions that we just saw, all of those are part of this question. What kind of leader are you now? So think about that. It's a big question. And then the another question is, okay, that's the question you are, leader you are now. What kind of leader would you like to be? What words and phrases would you like to be used about you? Oh, and these may be words or phrases. Very oftentimes it relates to your best boss. The ones that you used for your best boss are oftentimes ones that you wish for yourself. So think about those. So question 1, what kind of leader are you now? Question 2 is, what kind of leader would you like to become? And the third question is, what's the delta? What's the difference between where you are now and where you want to be? And in particular, what's going to move you from where you are now to where you want to be? And sometimes this is skills. Maybe you need to learn more public speaking or strategic mindset. But very oftentimes it relates to behavior. So think about both of those in that question. And when you do think of those questions, just remember that you are trying something new and you won't be good at it in the beginning. So the idea of the S curve is that, if we have time on the x-axis and performance or results on the y-axis, we oftentimes think, hey, when with practice I get better, but it is not linear. It does not look like that. If you've ever learned a language, you know that it doesn't look like that. Or if you've ever had to learn any type of new behavior. So it looks more like this, what we call the S curve, right? In the very beginning, you're not good at it at all. You don't know how to do it. You don't know how to approach it or think about it. So you look around, maybe you read a book, you watch people that are good at it, maybe you ask them for advice, and then you experiment and you make a lot of mistakes as you're going through. But then you get better slowly and then quickly, and then you level off. Right? You've learned that skill or behavior. And so to continue to grow, to continue up that y axis, that calls for another S curve. And so, what's the next one that you want to learn? And so, what I want to say is the time to launch that S curve is before you've flattened out on the first one, right? You're still polishing that. But what you might notice on this graph is that when you launch a new S curve, when you're learning a new behavior, our performance very oftentimes goes down. And that is a really hard place to be. If you're a high achieving person, mistakes are things we'd like to avoid. We don't want anyone to see us mess up. But if you are doing something new, that is part of the process. Again, think to learning a new musical instrument or learning a new language. You don't just, do a virtuoso performance or come out fluent. It takes a lot of, effort to get there. So just kind of keep that in mind. So, so with that, I shared with you the idea of going from the current state, the self understanding gives you that insight. Then we do the self management, which no surprise looks a little like an S curve, and that's where we get the transformative impact. It transforms us, the way we do things. It transforms our relationship with other people, and that gets us to those transformational results. But it starts with understanding ourselves and then managing ourselves, which understanding yourself can be tricky, can be hard, but managing yourself is actually harder because it means that you're stopping doing something that you routinely or habitually do and instead are replacing it with something that will move you closer to your goal. And that's really hard to do. So, a few things I want to mention on self management are, one is just keep in mind what Marshall Goldsmith, a very famous executive coach, says. He says, "What got you here won't get you there." So just keep that in mind that you are learning something new. You are going to mess up. Make a more informed attempt next time. So just keep that in mind that you may be very successful, but if you want to get to that next level, it's going to take a different level of you. So, with that, you can identify and understand your emotions. This is a big part of it because a lot of times our behaviors are driven by our emotions. And if we're not aware of our emotions, we can't be aware of our behaviors, or we are reacting to the person or the situation in front of us as opposed to responding perhaps in the way we want to. So learn to identify your emotions and understand them. How am I feeling? I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling whatever it is, right? No, there's no good or bad emotion. The only thing that's bad is not understanding what we're feeling. Also, set your intentions. How do you want to behave? If you normally work with somebody and you find them talking and meandering, and that makes you frustrated, so you cut them off. Maybe you don't want to do that. So you might want to set your intentions for saying, I want to let this person finish their sentence. I want to hear them out, whatever the intention might be. Then when you go into a meeting with them, you have that front and center, and you're more likely to be able to do that. Also, practice mindfulness. Mindfulness, you can do this with or without meditation. Mindfulness, the whole idea of mindfulness is that you are understanding what's happening in the present moment. You're paying attention without judging. And mindfulness, by the way, is the bridge between self understanding and self management. Because if you are aware of what your intentions are, you can behave that way in the moment if you're mindful. The other is, plan ahead. If you work with somebody that kind of pushes your buttons, think about the next time that you're in a meeting with them. How do you want to behave? What do you want to happen? And think about what different behaviors you could have. And then when you're in that moment, you're more likely to choose one of them that you've thought of. Set yourself up for success, and that means taking care of yourself. Eat well, sleep well, get some exercise. We are not at our best when we are tired or hungry or haven't moved in 3 days. So, very small things make very big impact. Find role models, perhaps ask them for advice. And a similar vein is you can consider an alter ego. Think about, well, what would my best boss do here? And by the way, you can use Ted Lasso here. An alter ego can be anyone or anything, real or imagined. Could be a cat, could be Ted Lasso, could be Superwoman, could be your best boss, could be whatever, anybody, right? So how would they handle this? You can think about that. And then lastly, I'd say reflect. Reflect, and how did that day go? How did that meeting go? What would I want to do differently next time? So just a few thoughts, right? Self management is hard. So some thoughts on that. So I was going to say we are at the end. So I will break here, and I think Anusha, you may want to take some questions or whatever.
Yes, please. We invite some questions, but I'm happy to kickstart as well, Margaret, because I know you and I were talking about this at the onset, and I had some questions about the boss. As you know, you talk about the alter ego, but let's talk about the stylized, the boss that looms large in our mind. But before I get there, I want to talk about the self-management slide because it caught something to my eye, which is like self-management is hard, right? I mean, even changing small behaviors like me trying to cut down my caffeine intake is a failed endeavor at this point. But I'm curious, what have you seen on this list? What are some micro steps that you've seen
Mm-hmm.
people take to get up the staircase?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above, right? I mean, I think the mindset, that first one is a big one, just realizing that, hey, I have to evolve as I go here, right? We're all human. We evolve as we go. You are not the same as you were when you were 10 or 18 or 28. You are not the same as you were 5 years ago, maybe even 1 year ago, right? Life happens, and when we adjust to a lot of things. So I think the big one is just having that mindset that, hey, I'm not good at this yet. I'm just going to have to practice with it. But all of these other things help because a lot of times, if we don't understand our own emotions, we don't realize how we come across to others. And so if we're frustrated with one of our employees, there's a high likelihood that that is showing up and maybe not in the way that you want it to. That doesn't mean you should never show frustration. That's not what I'm saying. But there are times when it's more appropriate than others. So all of this, all of these, and different people kind of use a different portfolio of these as well. So I say just try. But the important thing is to just remember you're not going to be good at it yet. So you got to keep going. Right? The only way to get better is to do it.
The other thing that I want to talk about is looking at your client list, you have some very large Fortune 500 names there. And we have folks in this call that work at such large companies, just looking at some familiar names there. But we have also folks that are working, in starting endeavors or solopreneurs. Are there any adaptations you would make to this advice, adaptations you would make to this advice, or would you think it's applicable across the spectrum of corporate entity?
Yeah, I would say I think it's applicable across all types of entities. I get a lot of people from the military, in particular the Air Force. I get a lot of not for profit leaders, big companies, small. So I've worked with all kinds of different folks. And I think the problems in leadership are the same. Right? Because we are messy, complex individuals, and everybody else is too, and that is what it's about. We are not the same. In fact, I'll say that I don't know how many of you may have kids, but I think the biggest lesson I ever learned from leadership was from having kids. That I have three of them, and I was not a babysitter when I was younger, and when my first son was born, I had never even changed a diaper. And I just remember leaving the hospital with him and thinking, if they knew how little I know about what I'm about to do, there is no way they would let me take him home, right? That would be child endangerment. But they didn't know this and they let me take him home. And I had to learn everything. I had to learn how to, feed him, clothe him, bathe him, all of that kind of basic stuff. But more importantly, I had to learn how to relate to him, kind of what his moods were, his likes, his dislikes, etc. And so it was a bit of an S curve. Right? I made some mistakes. He turned out fine, just so you know. But then, my second son was born. I thought, oh, right, I got this. Right. And oh, no, my second son was completely different from my first son. And so I had to learn all about him, his moods, his likes, his dislikes, etc. And then when my daughter came along, I thought, all right, now I got it. And no, wrong again. She was completely different from her two brothers. And so I had to learn the whole thing all over again in terms of relating to her. And that was the big epiphany was I thought, my gosh, I have three kids. They share the same genetic material and they were raised in the same household and they are so different. And that made me realize, my gosh, if they're not the same in the way they think and behave, why would I ever expect some random collection of strangers at work to be the same? And I think that was just the big, blinding flash of the obvious that really hit me and made me think, okay, this is so different. And I'd later heard Ed Catmull, who was head of Pixar, it had a very kind of similar story. And he said that he was always surprised when people would ask him, because he went from making those animated films to leading the company. And people would say, hey, don't you kind of miss, being on the creative side? And he said it kind of made him think, like, I don't think they understand. He said, I actually think leadership is one of the most creative endeavors. Right? And he said, because you have to figure out how to get this to work with the people that you have. And I thought, yeah, to me, that's the same thing. So it's a highly creative endeavor.
Margaret, I know we want to be judicious with your time. You have a book coming out, so I suspect you have a very busy couple of weeks ahead.
Yes.
As a final question, and as for you to wrap up, how excited you're about the book? How long was the journey? Give us a sneak peek, and then we are just so excited for the forthcoming book.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I think I started writing it in 2022. And I'm going to say halfway through and realized, oh, this stinks. So I just threw the whole thing out and started again. And I realized that, the good stuff is still in my head and will come into that second draft. But, it's a lot of drafts, right? Any creative process, as many of you know, has a lot of iterations. And that's just part of the process. And you have to, oh, I'm blanking on her name, who wrote Bird by Bird, the book on writing. And she talks about crappy first drafts, right? You just have to go through and just get through the crappy first draft. Anne Lamott, thank you. And to me, that's exactly what an S curve is. You gotta do the crappy first draft, and I had a few of those as well. But I've been teaching this for I think 18 years now, and so I got in touch with several former students, former executive participants, and things like that, and asked, hey, would you share some of your stories? So there's a lot of their stories in there too.
Um, that's amazing. We put a link, we put something in the chat about it, and so grateful for your time. And I
Thank
so
you.
enjoyed this session. So thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you for all of you for having me. And onward as we go. So here's to many more S curves ahead.
Indeed. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.